Welcome everybody to Melbourne. International guests?
Yes.
Yeah, best place in the world. You'll find it. It has to have something going for it because my ancestors on the mother side of the family, they were sort of here in this area, hanging around here for something like 50 to 60,000 years. Sort of hung around along the river here and out points north and west of Melbourne. So it has to be something going for it to hang around a place that long, I suppose. They couldn't go afield anyway because there were other people in other areas, sort of north of Melbourne and east and west of Melbourne. I think they were here also when you can actually walk from here to where Hobart is today. It'd be a long journey, of course, because I think that only happened something like 12,000 years ago after the last ice age, that our people couldn't walk there any longer to, I suppose, trade or whatever with the Tasmanians. Because we do have a story that goes right back. Like, you know, we have these Dreamtime stories that people, oh, they're funny little kids' explanation stories, but we do have historical stories as well of how Port Phillip Bay filled up some 12,000 years ago and how particular volcanoes erupted and so forth like that. So we do have these records of history that have been kept. But strangely enough, they weren't written down. We couldn't write. Well, you couldn't read either, I suppose. If you can't write, you can't read. But they had these great knowledge of the land that they lived on. Of course, Ian Hunter's a good name for an Aboriginal person, but it's got nothing to do with my Aboriginality. The Hunter comes from my father's side of the family, and his father actually was a Scot. So I ask students sort of thing when I'm doing work in schools. I'm going from here to go to do some work in a school at Mansfield this afternoon. That's just in our region sort of thing. And I explain that to the kids with the forms of photographs, and I said, well, what do you reckon I am? Oh, maybe you're a Scot originally? No, I'm not a Scot originally. I said, well, actually, I've got Aboriginal descendancy. I have to go back 4 generations. It was my ancestral people 4 generations back who actually met up with the first Europeans, not far from here, or down in that direction there in 1835, and allowed them to come, that they weren't going to spear them or do anything like that, and they had this a bit of an agreement that they weren't going to fight with one another. But Governor Burke seemed to have overruled that, and he said, oh no, you can't deal with the blacks because we already own the land. So what happened was that side of the family is my mother's side of the family, but then of course the Scottish side came in only 1 generation ago, but most of my ancestors prior to my grandfather were European, other than the first lady of my family, going back, as I say, back in 1835, welcoming the first people to our country. I think there's a couple of fellows by the name of John and Henry Batman, and a few of these mates sort of thing came from over the water. So we've done a fair amount of history and research to find out I grew up not knowing about our Aboriginality. It wasn't that we were stolen generation, because none of the people of the Melbourne region were stolen generation, but there were other indignities that Aboriginal people suffered. So it was only sort of, I suppose, 40 or so years ago that I realised that we were important people, that our family were the original inhabitants of the Melbourne region and had been living, as I said before, between 50 and 60,000 years here. So we began educating ourselves that we could educate other people. And that's part of it, I suppose. You know, like the other thing, getting back to the Scottish side, and there's a bit of English blood in there as well. It really virtually comes down to when kids do ask me what I claim to be. Well, I claim to be a proud Australian. You know, and I get really taken back by Aboriginal people of my colour saying, "Oh, well, hang on, I'm Indigenous." See, there are still Indigenous people living semi-Indigenous lives in remote communities. So to me, I feel I'm taking it away from those people by myself calling myself an Indigenous person, also taking away the fact that my father's people were Scottish. So I definitely do say that I'm a proud Australian. This funding, I hope you get the right government in for all the funding to come in, I suppose. That's because I think one side going, oh no, if they get in, we're going to not let you have this, but it all comes down to it's going to come. What comes around goes around, isn't it? Sort of thing. So hopefully all the funding going to keep coming because we do need hospital. I know, at my, I suppose, at my mature age, we find that we're visiting hospitals a lot more often these days, sort of thing. And I do have a daughter that, so you need to look after Maroondah Public Hospital. You need to look after them too, sort of thing, because I've got a daughter that runs one of the operating theatres or something out there. So have success with your conference, and hopefully that everything comes together the way that you all wish and want to. So welcome to the land of the Wurundjeri people, and enjoy, interstate and international guests, enjoy being in the best place in the world, Melbourne, Australia. Welcome. Thank you.